Hi, this is Pat McDonald, your host for Vote for Vermont, where our tagline is listening beyond the sound bites. I'm by myself tonight. The boys are who knows where, but we'll see them next week. My guest today is Chief Brian Peete, who is the new Chief of Police in Montpelier. Welcome, Chief.
Thank you.
Nice to see you. Thank you. We met at the event we were just talking about very briefly, and if you remember me, I'd be very impressed. But anyway, we're going to talk about policing in Montpelier and what it's like to be a new chief of police with his hands full already. Can you want to tell us a little bit about your background?
Well, I can definitely do that. And again, I want to thank you for the opportunity to
welcome.
be here. I started off when I graduated from college. I graduated with a degree in sociology, employment relations, and then went into the Air Force. I got commissioned. I was an aircraft maintenance officer for C-130s in Little Rock, and then the F-117A stealth fighter. I don't know, nowadays, nobody remembers that. It's old technology, but back in New Mexico, in Alamogordo. And then I transferred over, 9/11 hit, and I cross-trained into the Office of Special Investigations, which is the Air Force's version of the NCIS, FBI, everything rolled into one. So I did that at Langley, deployed to Afghanistan in 2004, in Nellis, and then came back to Nellis in Las Vegas, and then went over to be a regional manager in Virginia at Langley Air Force Base. And then I got out, and then I became a blue shirt or patrol officer in Chicago, and did that for roughly 10 years. And then I ended up leaving policing for a little while, and I joined the J.P. Morgan Chase for anti-money laundering. Know your clients.
Interesting.
Yeah, I did that for about a year, and but the call for public service was too strong, so I ended up going back to the city of Chicago, working with the Inspector General's office, and so we, did investigations there. And then when the incident happened with McDonald and the consent decree that Chicago police came under, so then I ended up transitioning over to another office, the newly created office with the Office of Inspector General for Police Accountability and Public Safety. So we were there charged with working through or helping the department work through the consent decree. And then after roughly several months there, then I went to the city of Alamogordo as the chief of police there, and then came here.
That's great.
So sorry about that.
Alamogordo, I was hoping you were going to say that first. I was like, Alamogordo. As New Mexico, that's fabulous. I've been through it and around it, and it's just beautiful out there.
It is gorgeous.
It's great stuff. But you left there, and with a lot of support I read from your community, so I think everybody there felt you did a really awesome job, and you came here, and there was a lot of support here from city officials. How have you found the transition for your family? You've got a wife and a little one at home, right?
Yeah.
Yes?
So Natalie and Gabriella, who just turned 7.
Yeah.
It was a very we're blessed. All things happen for a reason, and we're here. And Alamogordo was a beautiful place. There was great people that deserved everything that we had to offer. But coming here to Montpelier was. It's just to see the collaboration and the openness and the honesty within the city government. It was inspiring, and so every day I get a chance to come into work. I'm extremely happy about that.
That's great. Well, I must say this town, and I think thanks to Bill Frazier and all the hardworking folks around here, this town has won many awards for being the best little town and the best this and the best that, which is great. And we're just hoping all the stores reopen when we get past this the COVID, because it's just a great little town.
It is, and from what I can see, I have to admire the strength and the resiliency of the business owners that are here, because they're going through a lot.
It's incredible. So I know I read you have been written on about a lot. I had a lot of material to look you up, but you said you were interested because of the focus on modern community policing that Montpelier was undertaking. And that's certainly a big thing here in Vermont, if not all over the nation. What does that mean to you, modern community policing, and what would you like to see in the department?
Well, it means the willingness to not do things the same old way they've been done before. A stagnation is like the enemy of like pretty much to me common sense. And as technology grows, as we learn more about ourselves and our institutions, we have to grow with that. So it means a lot to be able to go into to come into a community where the expectations are high. And that that I have to meet those expectations, but then the support to get there is extraordinarily important. So I can have all the ideas I want, but if my boss and the city council are they want to keep doing this is the way we've always done it, or if we want to go way to this end,
Right.
we can do that. But so that's why that's essentially key. That was one of the biggest things for me in coming here.
That's great. Well, I think you'll find, and I'm sure they've reached out to you, the Chiefs of Police Association and the Training Academy. They're all very much involved with each other. Everybody sort of knows everybody in this state, and particularly in law enforcement, and they're there if you need them. I think you find that out. And usually it's Barry, Berlin, and Montpelier. There's sort of this threesome with Timmy Bombardier, Chief Bombardier, excuse me, Tim. And he's also from state police, so we know him from a long time ago. But, and I don't think they've named anybody in my town yet, have they, in Berlin?
In Berlin, yeah, I think it's Mr. Ponnebrand.
Yes, that's right, from Barry Town.
Yeah, he came out from Barry, and then.
That's right, exactly. That's good. So I don't know how you did this. When did you start in this job?
In this job in
Yeah.
June of 2020.
So in August, you put out this, was it 14, lots of pages. I read it, and 17 pages, and it's the initial organizational assessment and strategic plan, and it's excellent. And I don't know what you left out, because I think everything's here. So how did you get started, looking at what you have in the organization, and how did you even start to know what you had?
Well, I appreciate that. I tried to put in as much work as I could. Every time I come into a new organization, I want to know where we're at. And I think we had an earlier conversation. We were talking about the best ideas are coming from the folks who are actually doing the work.
Exactly. Every job I've ever had in state government, I was there for about 20 years in these kind of commissioner jobs. And you look to the people who do the work, because they don't want to be getting beat up by the public by, inefficient and blah, blah, blah. And it's just not true, because they're good folks. So.
They're very good folks,
Yep.
and that's what I got the chance to learn personally and professionally about the people that are at that department. And so it was twofold. I wanted to make sure that I was doing diligence and credibility to them, that I was honoring the things that they were seeing and experiencing and wanting to change, as well as the attention on our institution, our professionalism. So I wanted to try to be impartial and bring all the information out for all of us to see, to understand, to absorb, and then to figure out what our strategic steps are going to be going forward.
That's great. Maybe I just took a couple of I didn't want to go through all 10 areas, but I think, what did you find? What were the summary of what you found? Is it in good shape? Could be better? Everything could be better, I'm sure. But where are you in the level of service and relationship with the community and all those things?
I think that the city of Montpelier should be proud of its department. This is one of the most highly functioning organizations I've been a part of, to include my time in the military.
Wow.
And I'm not saying that lightly, because if there were issues here that I thought we needed to address that were urgent, I definitely would say something about that and do something to it. But the culture, I think, is the biggest part of the department. It's essential in policing. If you have a culture that looks at itself as something that that will promote an us versus them to the community that we're sworn to serve, then we're going to have problems. It takes years to change culture, and it takes months to destroy one. But the department's culture here is enviable, I think, to any other place.
I agree with you. I think it's great. And you also talked about having a lot of input from stakeholders in the community, and then talking to your officers and staff. What was the feedback that you got from the community?
The community was, again, I think most folks understand the role of policing and what the department does, and with those high expectations, and they just want to make sure that we hold true and that we hold accountable and transparent. And I see that is the vibe of not only the state, but especially our city here. So in seeing that the community wants us to be more visible, they want us to be out there, just like any other community. And then from the department itself, it's a little bit different because we're struggling with morale, and with the morale, and with the sense that that the officers feel that they're being isolated. So we have to figure out ways to let the officers know that, we have to overcome that feeling or that perception to get out there and to realize that they do things right, that they're good people and they're being supported, and that the job that they do, their function they serve is an important one as well. So the officers are feeling a lot of emotional, and their families as well, a lot of emotional issues that they're struggling with because of what they feel the national narrative.
I was just going to say it's probably more national, because I've been doing a very small series here about is there racism in Vermont, and I've had couples come on and individual people that I've known. I actually didn't want to ask the professionals. I wanted to ask the men and women on the street, and they believe there's a systemic racism, but it's not individually. I don't know how to say that, but I think in criminal justice and that sort of thing, there's some issues, but not one-on-one, and walking the streets and that sort of stuff. They don't see it, at least the folks I've had on the show, and I don't get a sense of that in Montpelier or my town. I think they're very well respected.
Yeah, I've been told. I mean, there's a twofold argument that's coming. So at the same time, sometimes I hear there's an exceptionalism applied to Montpelier. That doesn't happen here. We're a community of this. And we do this. But then at the same time, if I go someplace else, somebody will tell me, well, be careful because they don't like, somebody's had several bad experiences as a person of color in this neighborhood or this community, and I don't want to play down of anyone else's experiences, but mine have been. Might have been different. So this discussion is very complex, and so I'm just hoping that as we have this discussion, we do it in a very responsible way, and acknowledging that with each other.
Good idea, and just keep your mind open, because if they're feeling it, if it's perceived, it's true. I mean, if somebody, even if they're perceiving it incorrectly, it's still true to them.
Exactly, exactly. So some people have had some good experiences, some have not.
Interesting. You have down a section on strategic planning. What do you think going forward? What do you think you're going to want to ask of your men and the community? Men and women, excuse me, and the community. Sorry, shame on me.
I think it's just for us to look at the specific issues that the city faces and that the department faces, and how do we meet those challenges, and how do we not confuse the narrative and what's going on in other places, and convolute the conversation of what we're trying to do here in Montpelier. If we don't lose sight of that, we can be the example of this national conversation, and we can push things forward, and we can be a positive.
I think we're small enough to be able to pull that off, to really take a lead, because as we were talking about, it's 1.4% black folks in Vermont, and 4% overall of minorities, and I think it's a number that we should be able to reach out and speak one-on-one and have group discussions and have a dialogue both ways. So that's great. Have you been the governor? Oh my gosh, Commissioner Sherling. Sorry, I forgot the commissioner's name. Commissioner Sherling and Governor Scott just did a document on what they would like to see as far as changes in policing in Vermont. Have you read those documents?
Yes, I have.
I know some of the law enforcement folks don't think they had enough time to speak, and I think that Commissioner Sherling is hoping that this coming session they will have that opportunity to weigh in on some of the. I thought it was a pretty good document. I saw a few things that maybe needs a little tweaking, but I thought it was pretty good.
I think that with the time and with everything that's going on, I think that what Commissioner Sherling, his team, and the governor had put together, I'm in wholehearted agreement and lockstep with.
Yeah, I think so, and I think you know, I don't know where you guys are about cameras and chokeholds and all. I mean, some of the things we saw on TV were just appalling. You know, the neck on, you know, the individual and the chokeholds. That's just all training, I would think, and retraining until you get it in your head that that's what, you know, this is how you respond.
Yeah, I think some of that goes back to culture, and some of it goes back to expectation. From coming here into Vermont and working to get my certification in the state, I think the state, the training academy spends a very good amount of time and concentration of its expectations on how you deal with people with dignity and mutual respect. So to me, a lot of places that I've seen and studied, when they're talking about how do we change a systemic culture in our area, Vermont has been doing this for a very, very long time. And granted, there are always going to be bad apples in every given situation. But I think what the state has been working to do and is continuing to do, it shows the foresight, shows that the state itself wants to lead where policing is going to go. And so I really take my hats off to them. And I think that the only thing that's slowing them down is just a limitation of resources.
Right. I think that the training academy has come a long way on how they train. And the one thing I was questioning, forget who was on the show, how, when you're interviewing, which apparently in some places is hard to find candidates these days because of the feeling that they have that the public is not so thrilled with law enforcement, that they're not bounding on the door to get a job. But how, if you want to know how a person's mindset is, what their cultural basis is, are there questions that you can ask in an interview that can draw out what a person really feels about other races, about you know, certain situations, how they would behave? I mean, have they come to that point in interviewing where they can really identify culture and thought process? You know what I'm trying to say?
I do. I think it's I don't know. I think that's somewhat of a that would be difficult, I think, in any case.
Yeah.
But for what I understand about the process that Vermont has, I mean, it includes mandatory polygraph. It includes personality assessments.
Right.
It includes, specifically for the Montpelier Police Department, we try to bring in members of the community through these processes, through our hiring process and our promotional processes. So we're trying to get a vibe because we want to make sure that the officer that comes into Montpelier it reflects the values of what our communities are and knows what the expectations are. It's hard to work here.
For sure.
There's a lot of expectations here, but we want to make sure that the people we bring in understand what that is.
Yeah, most of my background's been human resources, and to tell you the truth, sometimes you miss who the person really is, because they certainly know the answers you want to hear.
Yeah.
And if they're somebody different than what they're appearing, it's hard to find that out.
It is. There's there are always going to be people who quote unquote sneak through the cracks.
Right.
They're going to be not every good teacher is a teacher, or not every teacher is a good teacher. Not every counselor is a good counselor.
Right.
Social worker, doctor. We can go down the. But the question, I think, the most responsible question we can ask when it comes to policing is, what are the mechanisms in place to catch that and to hold those individuals accountable and to hold that organization accountable? Because there's, God forbid, but unfortunately, there may be continued instances like this. And I think what people really want to make sure is that, what are we doing to make sure it doesn't happen in our community? And what are we going to do should we start to see these early warning signals?
Well, you and I were talking before when you and I were at that event that they had for law enforcement. I think it was maybe a month or so ago. Probably longer than that. But I was talking to people in state government about what I saw happen, and they, the Vermont way. And I said, I really think that Vermont way may not be happening as we would like it to happen, because we're being influenced by out-of-staters, by the national news, and I hope it stays, but I don't see it. I think just naturally we'll have to be different going forward, and we're going to have to plan for that.
Well, from what I've seen and what I understand about how things have worked, how people have expressed their feelings and their opinions in the past, I think that what we've been seeing in the most few recent months is just a rise in confrontation between one another.
Right.
And the hope is that that we can all figure out how to talk to one another. It's during heat of the moment types of situations like that, when folks are very emotionally charged about how they feel about a given situation or circumstance, I think that it's more essential for people to step back and not to try to engage in those conversations, because the odds of changing someone's mind who's motivated to come out in 20-degree weather and express their, we're just yelling past each other.
Right.
And hopefully, I think at the end of the day, when the emotions go away, we all realize we all want the same things, and
Yes,
we
we
just
do.
have to find that common ground and talk to each other.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Now you worked, I didn't realize it was 10 years in Chicago. That's an interesting city to work in. And that's from what we hear, speaking of national news.
I had a full afro before all this, but
That's interesting, because, and to take that to go to Alamogordo,
yes.
thank you, and then to come here, it is different than Chicago. So, but I'm sure it's given you a lot of lessons and things to be aware of, and maybe to help us get better at what we do.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, the fact is, I'm learning here, and I've seen ways to do things. Some good ways, some not so good ways. And in coming here, I've seen a lot of good ways of doing things. So I'm just trying to take the experiences that I've had, put them together, and do something that's going to work for the city of Montpelier, not what we did in Chicago or what we did in New Mexico.
You
but
should
what's
bring
gonna
in the
work
Miracle Mile here to Montpelier. Yeah, I must say that is the most gorgeous, when you're on the lake or you're on the water and just looking at Chicago with the building with the diamond. And,
yes.
I mean, it's a beautiful skyline. It's really great. And that Miracle Mile's not too shabby either. So we need shopping here if you're into bringing the economy back. So you've been focusing on inclusion, accountability, transparency, and community-based servicing. It sounds like it's what you want to see, and I'm sure it's pretty contagious for your officers. And they would like that too, I would think, to be included. Inclusion's important.
Yeah, the officers do want to be part of the conversation. So as we're moving forward and we're having these these community dialogues about policing, and one thing that's kind of making me nervous is just that as we talk about, I'm not. The police, the institution itself has its sins. You know, I grew up on the south side of the city of Chicago. I know what it's like in a lot of certain situations. I know what it's like to overcome odds. But I think what unites everyone's experiences is we all know what it feels like for someone else to treat you the way that you didn't deserve to be treated.
Right.
And if we hold on to what that felt like, we can all figure out how we can move forward together. And so I want to make sure that we bring that message of unity. But the officers are, again, you know, they're trying to find their footing in what's going on, and they're trying to feel. Just trying to find the community, their footing in the community.
You know, they did some really good things. I had Tony on the show, Tony Fakos, when he was chief. They did this thing called Team 2. Mm-hmm. And I just had Mary Moulton on the show, who's from Central Washington County Mental Health.
Yes.
And I am one of her biggest fans ever. I love what Mary does. And that Tony brought, and I don't know, I'm sure it's in other towns as well, cities, where they're bringing in caseworkers, social workers to work with the police. And you actually mentioned it, I think, in this paper that you wrote about doing more of that. So that when you come upon a situation where there's mental health problems involved, and we have had some cases here that have really received attention, sadly, where it's been involved with somebody that's dealing with mental health issues, and you know, the community, the officer did everything right, but the community had wished they would have done something different because the person was mentally handicapped. but I think bringing social workers together and going out and trying to diffuse a situation, that really is excellent.
Yeah, I think what Washington County Mental Health does, Mary, is like
Oh.
when I studied this area,
Yeah.
I looked at Mary, I was like, I want to meet this woman and I want to just pick her brain.
Yeah.
Her, Gary Gordon, their entire team, I've gotten a chance to see them in action.
Aren't they great?
And yes, they are. I'm extraordinarily impressed with what they are and the passion they bring to what they do. So yeah, I think Team 2 is a phenomenal thing, but there are, it's the dynamics of this work of public service. It's not an easy job, and we always hope for the best when we have these interactions, but sometimes it's not the officers that may be able to determine the outcome of the situation.
Right. Because I sometimes struggle because when you initially see somebody who has mental issues, you may not know it. I mean, it's not like they wear some kind of a sign or a badge, I mean, unless they're really acting unusual, but perhaps they're not. And so how do you know that? And maybe a social worker could see signs differently than perhaps a law enforcement officer could.
So yeah, again, I guess it depends on the context of the call. So Team 2 training which is what Washington County and which is what's been brought to the state.
Right.
It's really cool because it gives officers an in-depth understanding. So before I went into the psychology field, I had no idea. I just had no idea what people were dealing with, or struggling with, and what their families were going through. So it's one thing to, the experience, the exposure, and the knowledge and the training will give you that when you come into a situation and you kind of see that there's something that's there are indicators here. They're telling me that this might be more of a mental health type of an issue. That's what that training helps us to do, is to help us to pick up on it, and anything that we can get is valuable.
Right.
But there's also caution again, because as societies are finding less ways to fund the government institutions, what tends to happen is that the police departments and first responders tend to be the catch-all. If social services are gonna hurt, or money's gonna be pulled from those institutions, then officers are gonna find themselves doing those types of calls for service. And I think that's where we're at the point now. So we have to do what we can to figure out how to make sure that the resources are applied across the board. But at the same time, there's a public education aspect to it.
Right.
So if someone calls about a barking dog, or someone calls about somebody who's exhibiting a certain type of behavior, they're calling us. Right. And so we have to figure out a way to respond to that in a way that happens, and then we have to also work together as a community to figure out which calls for service the police should be responding to, depending on the values.
Burlington. They've just switched that parking. Traffic violations will be handled, or just parking violations will be handled by Public Works rather than the police. And I thought, whoa, that's interesting, because it frees the police up, especially in Burlington, to do other stuff, which is probably a little bit more important in the bigger scheme of things than parking tickets.
It's any working in the public, as you especially know a lot. It's challenging, and sometimes you're meeting people when they're not having the best days. And so I think that the other big part, one of the pillars of the 21st century policing is wellness and safety. And as we're trying to teach officers and each other how we need to respond, but we also need to look at the individuals who are out there dealing with this every day and make sure that they're okay. Because if I'm not doing well, and I move myself into, or I find myself at a call for service, that the situation kind of triggers something for me, or again, it could affect the outcome. So we have to, as we invest in training and resources for officers and first responders and everyone else, we have to be very cognizant of making sure that they have the tools of resiliency they need to do their jobs correctly.
For sure. What is the town thinking about body cameras? Are they talking about that? I've sort of lost track of that.
That's the body-worn cameras are I think that are the first priority for me in trying to implement to the Montpelier Police Department. So far, I haven't heard many people that are against the idea. So I'm hoping that that, if we can find the resources to
Right,
do body worn
right.
cameras.
I think this year, the sad part is, because we're talking resources, this coming year is just going to be horrible for us, for the state as whole, because of COVID. And while they had some money to get through this past year with the budget, I think things are going to come home to roost, because there won't be that kind of money coming in on the economy side, on tourism, on the things that usually bring in money to the state. I think it's going to be very tight. So it may not be the best year for raising hand.
Yeah, no,
we need more, but
you are 100% correct, and that's one of the things that makes me look at like the importance, and I think that Montpelier really understands that, because you have like Dan with Montpelier Alive, and the folks in the business community,
Right.
and they understand how valuable businesses in our city are, and so our department wants to make sure that we're there to do everything that we can to support them, and I just have nothing but admiration. And
Dan does a
for
great
them.
job.
He does. I like him, and one of the other good things I like about working with Dan is Dan's not afraid to tell you what he thinks.
That's good. That's good for him, because he's done something. I'm trying to remember. He's published things to do in Montpelier that you don't have to go to Burlington. That he just had a radio. I was on WDEV, I think, and he was saying, "Do you want a sweatshirt? Go to this store. Do you want jewelry for Christmas? Go to this store." And he was really promoting what you can buy, because I make it a commitment every year that at Christmas time I buy solely local. And so that's everybody gets local from me, because I just think, that's really the time they look forward to making a few extra bucks. And of course this year it's critical.
Yeah, and I've learned something about that. So coming here, we're the only Peetes that are here, or the
Right.
Salavas, which is my wife's maiden name, that are here in Vermont. And as we ask people, what does our niece or our nephew want for Christmas, or what would you like? And everyone wants something that's like, I've never been in the Northeast Kingdom. Send me something that's Vermont unique.
Excellent.
And it makes a lot of sense, because when you really think about it, like if we compare ourselves to Burlington, for example, the amount of time and gas that it would spend to drive to Burlington and come back.
Right. We call that the other Vermont.
So I agree with Dan. Buy
Yes.
local. Buy
Yes,
local.
oh, for sure. And now with the restaurants, I must admit, although my daughter and a few other family members are upset with me, but I go out to lunch with my friend, and I think all the restaurants here have been very responsible, have kept social distancing, and I haven't, knock on wood, had any problems, because these people I want them to be here when this thing is lifted and gone away.
Oh, I think
we're known for our restaurants.
Yeah, when I first got here, I asked somebody, asked them, hey, where can I get a good food? Where's this? Where's that?
Right.
And a lot of people just overwhelmingly says, well, if you go to Montpelier, they didn't know who I was or
Right,
from
right.
anyone else, but they were like, if you go to any food in Montpelier, it's good.
Yeah, for sure.
And it has been, so a few weeks ago, the governor came out with an order. He wanted the Montpelier Police Department was assisting the state police in helping to do like checks for local businesses, the restaurants, lodging facilities.
Right.
And so I got a chance to personally go out and talk to the business owners and the restaurateurs who are here. And even before we were looking at compliance checks, what they were doing to help. And it wasn't because somebody was telling them to do it. It was because I honestly think they truly care about their community and their patrons.
Oh, for sure. Everybody here. We have the usual folks who we all love, who just, to go to them, and they'll give you a tractor trailer if you need it, and they just go out of their way. And now I had Sue Mintner on the other day, and she is the executive director for Capstone. And the restaurants have been just bending over backwards, making food for people who need it. And this is a great statistic. I don't know if you heard this one. 1 out of every 4 Vermonters are dealing with food insufficiency, which in an agricultural state upsets me to no end. Mm-hmm. Because how can you even be there in an agricultural state? And she said there have been so many restaurants and so many people helping to feed people who are in need. It's just amazing what people in our communities do.
And that's one of the things I really love about this place, and just the
You'll find
admiring.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. When our farmers market finally, this is all over, that's the one of the most fabulous things about Vermont. There are farmers markets everywhere in this state, and one's better than the next. And Montpelier's got a really great one.
I've been to this one, to the one in town several times.
Right, well,
Loved it.
I think usually it's just bigger, when we're not under this stuff. But I think you've probably been here long enough to know we have I just wrote down some things that came to mind. We've talked mental health. We have addiction crisis, and we haven't heard much about that, but I have a feeling it has not gone away. It's probably gotten worse during COVID.
We've seen rises in certain things, and dependency is unfortunately one of them.
Yep. I think, fortunately, speaking of Mary and others, we have this thing called Spoken Hub, which is where if you make an entrance anywhere in our system, you get the help you need. They will steer you in the right direction, so you're not knocking on doors and begging for help. You go in any door, and you'll get the help you need, which I think is fabulous. Suicides is another thing, and Mary's group has that Suicides 6. It's a program that they have to try to deal with mostly teenagers with suicides, and then homelessness and our lack of housing. And so other than that, we're in great shape.
Yeah.
There's a lot to deal with.
There is, and again, I take my hats off to how our city council is working to try to listen and try to figure out ways to do all this. It all comes into the same area of public safety, and I think that we're all part of that team to do what we can to serve and help each other.
Yeah, that's great. You mentioned in an article about Barack Obama's 21st Century Policing Task Force, and you obviously were very impressed with that. And could you, I apologize because I'm not really sure I know much about what that task force was all about.
Sure. So back in during President Obama's during his tenure, he wanted to put together a group of experts, panel folks from all different perspectives and stakeholders, and try to figure out what it is that the police need to do to re-inspire trust within the communities they serve. So you had folks like Charles Ramsey, you've had individuals from the ACLU, you've had people from NAMI and CIT International, the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives. You had just a slew of folks that came together about the business of trying to figure out how to strengthen the institution. And ironically enough, Tony Fakis, my predecessor, was involved somewhat in a smaller role, but up there in Washington, talking about talking about the things that they were doing here in Montpelier. So it's just great. So they were able to pretty much codify the things we need to do, and they translated into 6 pillars. And if you follow what those 6 pillars are, and you work around a strategic plan or an outline that immerses itself in those 6 pillars, you would probably have a very successful police department.
Can you do those 6 pillars?
This department's already done them.
Oh, I mean, what are they for? Can you?
So I think there's training, there's officer wellness, there's community resource. So yeah, I have them. I think I should have them outlined in that. Yeah,
that's okay. We'll. I think the wellness thing is probably very important. If we have to give our officers a place to go, and without the stigma, to go and get help if they need it, and maybe their families too. Which
stigma is probably the best word, because again, in law enforcement, we've had this thing that kind of like an old baseball or football that, hey, coach, I can't move my arm anymore. We'll rub some dirt on it, get up and go moving.
Exactly.
That's how we used to
pull
look at
yourself up,
things.
young man.
Yeah, pull yourself up by the bootstraps, and it's not that easy.
Here we are.
And so it's to me, each pillar is important. But the foundation pillar. Thank you.
No problem.
So the main pillar, I think, is the foundation pillar. Is you have to make sure that the officer and their family are okay. Just like everyone says about any organization, the most important part of any organization is the people. We recognize that, and we have to invest in their wellness and their happiness, and that translates into good service to the communities that we serve.
Because I would think if you go home from a very bad day to an unhappy household, that just adds to your stress, correct? I mean, and then you get up the next morning and go back into the stressful police work. So,
yeah, it does, and but again, we have to figure out just how do we provide support for the officers, the staff, and their families especially.
That's good. I think I hope that they feel comfortable to be able to talk get help. And I think these days it's not frowned upon as it used to
No.
be. I mean, years ago, oh my God.
No, it's
you know,
highly encouraging.
Yeah.
It's highly encouraged. And Captain Neil Martell, who just retired from the department, he and Captain Nordenson have been huge in pushing for officer wellness. So now we have a contract with Sonny Provoto in Vermont, who specializes in police wellness and help.
I know that name. I must have run into.
Yeah, Sonny's a good person, and so we've actually established, with the support of Bill Frazier and our city council, we've actually established a memorandum with them, and we encourage our officers that if they're feeling bad or they're feeling down, this is where you go to talk to them. So so we want to make sure we provide as many resources as we can to help. So not to butcher them, but those 6 pillars are to build trust and legitimacy, policy and oversight, technology and social media, community policing and crime reduction, training and education, and then that 6th pillar is officer
That's
wellness.
great. Good job. I guess I feel it would be interesting to know how they would want to come out and meet the community, whether there's just being visible at the flea markets, what did I just say? My God, my mind just went blank. Where we go out on Saturday and just buy all the food that we can, and just to be out in the community. I think that's important.
That was the primary takeaway. I've had that opportunity to meet with people in the community and to ask them what their opinions on policing are. And surprisingly, it's so our challenges are different, you know. And so and everyone in the community wants to see police officers, and they want to see police officers as humans. And they want to see police officers when things aren't going bad.
Right.
So we have to find ways to have our officers in the communities to be there because it's, you know, it's just important, and it's one of the values of our community.
I think the kids. So because when I was brought up, if you were in trouble, the very first person you looked for was a police officer. That was drilled into you this high when I was growing up, which was a long time ago. And I would think now you would want that still, that if your child is in trouble out in the community, you want to be able to go to a police officer and get help.
And that's one of the things that kind of hurts me in today's climate. Even that's something that we were raised in as well. And both of my parents are retired from the Chicago Police Department. My brother's on the job now.
That's great. Right.
But that's what we, you know, we've all had negative experiences with all kinds of different people in different professions. And what I think what hurts me the most is that there have been instances where people's faith in our department and the uniform I wear has been shaken. And I'm going to do everything that I possibly can to bring that trust and that faith back.
Well, you've really entered into a pretty difficult time. And I think it's nationwide. Some places probably way worse than here. But we've had the issue in Burlington where the young people took over the park, and you and I were at the event at the State House, and there's another one coming up in a few days. Well, there'll be it's going to be a First Amendment event, and also at the last day of Hanukkah, which they wanted to talk about bringing in, you know, religious freedom and being able to talk about your religion and just speaking your mind. And my experience has been, and you sort of alluded to it before, if people aren't changing their minds, they're not willing to listen. And one of the things that we were famous for, I think, in Montpelier, in the legislature, we would say the best bill is the third bill, your bill, my bill, and the compromise bill. But that third bill doesn't exist anymore. It's either your bill or my bill. And people need to stop that. They need to listen.
Well, I'm encouraged definitely with how Commissioner Sherling and his team and the governor are trying to take a very there's a definite sense of urgency. There's an understanding of what is going on what the national dialogue is, and I think that they're focusing on making sure that that stuff doesn't happen here. I'm very, very encouraged with the manner in which they're doing things, and that they're encouraging this dialogue and these conversations between everyone. Because again, we're not doing anything. We're not doing each other. We're wasting our time if we're talking past each other.
Yeah.
We have to find a way to talk to each other.
I agree with you 100%. I don't know if you, when I was talking about the addiction and all that stuff, we did a series here. It was a gentleman over in Burlington, Channel 17. He did 4 videos and I did 4, and they were about all of the components of addiction, education, having addiction itself, recovery, and we hit on every single aspect that the governor's addiction council was working on, and they've been shown around Vermont, and I learned so much from doing those shows. And the one thing that I was really excited about was, and you talked about wellness for your officers, that healthcare these days is looking at the whole person. And it's not just, here, take an aspirin for your headache. Well, why do you have the headache? Well, would massage help? Would basketball help? Would baseball? I mean, something besides just doing the standard medical treatment, that maybe it's the whole person that makes you. And I think probably with law enforcement, to try to talk about the whole officer and his or her family.
Yeah, it's a holistic. It's definitely a holistic approach. And as we look at like internal issues, well, we take everything as we work in the community. We take everything that we can into consideration.
Yeah.
What's going on at home? How are things working towards? And that helps apply not only from what I've seen within our policies, practices, and culture within the department as we deal with the community, but the state's attorney's office as well. So it's not a lock somebody up, throw away the key. I think that everyone tries to bring in as many resources as they can, the community justice centers, everything, to make that work. So we want to make sure that we apply that same holistic approach internally. We do it for everyone else. We need to do it for ourselves, and we need to give folks the chance to get themselves better, to heal, because they see a lot of trauma.
What do you, when you're looking forward, what are things that you would like to see change, or made better? Let me phrase it that way. Improved upon, because I really think we're in pretty good shape here. I think
for the department,
yeah.
I would just hope for our conversations to start, for our serious conversations to start with all members of our community, and that we pull away, that the police aren't defensive in how we do things, and that the community's not understands, that wants to take an understanding approach to what this job is about. It's right now the Montpelier. I inherited a team that's, I'm a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. We were 11-0, but now we're 11-2.
Yeah.
I've inherited a team of professionals who were, at the worst, a 12-1 team. And so the issue is, how do we accelerate that excellence that this department already has? And I would stand up on the rooftops and say that I am proud to wear this uniform and to follow in the footsteps and to serve the men and women of this department.
That's excellent. Because you were talking about, we just said you wanted to lead with love and to listen, which, wow, you can't get much better than those two approaches, to love and to listen, because I don't think we listen very well these days. I think we've lost that knack.
There's a lot of things that are going around, but I think we can and we will collectively rise up to meet these challenges that we're dealing with.
I think when you're this angry that people are, no matter what people are talking to you, you don't hear it because you're so busy being angry.
Yeah.
And they have to cut that out.
That's true. And again, I need to make sure that I follow that rule myself. So I got to be willing to hear that criticism.
Yeah, I know.
And I always will be.
Yeah, that's great. You'll find that there's so many organizations in this town that would love to have the Rotary, there's so many of them that would love to have you come and, well, I guess not with COVID now. What are they doing? I'm falling back on what I know, but there's such an active group of clubs here and associations, I guess through Teams or through Zoom, I just find this so much better.
Oh,
We do, as I said, we do Monday nights at the studio and Thursday night by teams, but it's just not the same.
Yeah, it's not. There's something I think that all of us as human beings, if COVID's taught us anything, is that we're people, and that's vital
Has your
for us.
department have to make some changes with what you do? I'm trying to think. Obviously, the masks would.
Yeah, the masks that there's a lot of concern because we want to make sure that on twofold that so we've had to make sure that to try to work towards more reactive based policing and not proactive based policing. We have to exercise the discretion that we want to make sure our contact is minimalized because we don't want our officers to get sick. I don't want them to take something and take it home to their families. I couldn't live with myself if that happened. And I think every police officer is extraordinarily concerned if they have an interaction with one member of the community. They're very cautious, and if I have to go into someone else's house, I don't want to, so they don't want to bring that around. This is really, I can't say enough. Just I think just the level of passion and professionalism that the members of this department have.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you. I know a few of the officers. And they're just great. And a lot of them, they'll be at the State House, which is where I've met most of them, and they're great. And here you are in the Capitol. You must have taken a tour of our State House. Isn't it fabulous?
Oh my God, it's beautiful.
Isn't it incredible? David Sheets, who's the curator, he is just on a pedestal 9 miles high. He has done so much for that building, and to keep who we are and our tradition alive in that building.
There is something to walk those halls. We got a chance to see it very quickly, but just to walk those halls and just to see, wow.
Yeah, he would take you on a tour of that. There's so much history there and so many nuances of things that only David sort of would share with you and know about that building. But how old are your children? You said?
Gabby is 7.
Oh, wow. She would love that.
Yeah, cool. Chief Romeo. I love Chief Romeo. He's the chief of police for the Capitol Police.
Yep.
And he told us about this page system that when Gabby gets older and she's in high school, she can be a page. So we're already drilling that in her head.
Oh no, that's fabulous. They're just great, and they're so funny. At the end, they do this. They'll do some kind of ceremony for the kids, and one or two of them will do their interpretation of the legislators, and man, they nail them. They just nail them because they're so astute, these kids, and we all think we're so special, and they'll just nail you. They'll be with the mustache and doing things, and it's really cute. But we just have about 5 minutes, and I wanted to talk about what is really critical to you. What of all these things that we talked about, and I'm sure mental health is. I mean, what's really important from a social perspective to deal with?
Well, again, I think our department is in the right direction. It has been headed there for quite a long time, and the current limitations that we have, budget, financial, those are things that are going to come and go. So I can't say that those are there. But what I would hope for, what I would stress now more than ever, is just we need to slow down for a second. We need to listen to each other. We need to be kind to each other. We need to see each other as humans, as human beings, as people with families, brothers and sisters, mothers, fathers. We all need to see that, no matter, quote unquote, what side of the fence that you are. So I just want to urge all of us just to appeal to that better side of ourselves.
That's great. Take a step back a minute. Yeah, I agree with you. It's I've never seen people so angry. And I'm sure it doesn't do them much good either from a health perspective. You can't walk around like that so angry. God, give it a break.
Sometimes it's just like draining. I mean, we could all think about like that one person, and we've all been there. We've all done it. I've been a victim of it, or I've been an offender of it, and my wife will tell me in a heartbeat. As soon as I walk through the door, she's like, "Okay, Daddy's going to be in a little crappy mood," and then she'll call me on it. She keeps me grounded. I owe Natalie so much. But we got to remember what it feels like to be that, remember what it's like to be around that person and just everything's negative, just no matter what it is. Oh my God, hey, look, I got a new car. Yeah, but it's purple. I hate purple. It's like,
How dare you? You
Yeah.
have purple. No, I know. It's amazing. It's
Yeah,
amazing.
it's
to
it's
me.
draining. So let's just be positive.
Yeah.
Let's be
So
positive.
how much do you get in with talking about your daughter? Do you guys get involved with the schools a lot? Because you've got the high school not so far away. You've got a middle school right down Main Street.
As far as the department,
Yeah, just interacting with the kids.
we've
Not so
been
much?
our position, our SRO position's been suspended from
Oh,
the
has it
schools.
really? The school
So we don't have the
resource
opportunity.
officer?
Yeah, the
That's too
SRO, the
bad.
school resource officer, has been suspended from the school. So right now the board is going through a process to work with the community and work with stakeholders and try to get a perspective on SRO and the future of policing in schools. And so for the time being, we haven't been able to execute our strategic plan on like youth outreach.
Right.
And because again, yeah, I'm not saying that the police didn't earn this. We're paying for the sins of what we've been dealing with. But the only way that we're going to all bounce back is if we don't separate ourselves from each other.
Right.
We have to expose ourselves. We have to have these conversations. We have to learn what is the department doing to hold itself accountable, and are we worthy of the trust?
Right.
And so we need that opportunity to be back out there.
Yeah, because I think the kids, as we said before, they just need to know that they can rely, that that's where they need to go for help and not be afraid. I've heard some of the politicians talk about telling their kids that, to be afraid. I'm like, what?
That was, from a personal note, I've been in several, several places, and what you would hurt me, it did make me angry. It hurt me. And trying to figure it out is, to be driving in a squad car and then see a family and wave at a child, and for a parent to say, they either say, sometimes is like, they're coming to arrest you. It's like, don't tell that to that child. Or that's the boogeyman.
Right.
Or
to use you as the fear factor.
Right. Or to give blind obedience to say, well, they're, all of those I think is damaging in its own right. So again, I think that just boils back to we have to be careful with the words that we choose and how we talk to each other and explain the situation to each other.
There's a concept. Thank you very much, Chief. It's a pleasure meeting you.
Pleasure
and
was
thank you for
mine.
your service.
Thank
you.
you.
Have a great background. I'm really glad to meet you. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. And we'll see you next week. And in the meantime, keep listening beyond the soundbite.